welcome. This is the Royal Rota from ITV, where you get all things royal all in one place every week here on either YouTube or on your favourite podcast platform. And this week, Lizzie's here as ever. We have got news on the Queen, we have got Marcus Rashford, we have got Elton John, we have got, actually an insight into Princess Diana as well.
We have.
From someone who's been finding out all about her on a new podcast. And we've got a court case.
We have. You've just talked through the Robinsons' Royal Rundown.
So we're not doing the Robinsons'
so
Royal
we'll
Rundown.
Just scrub that entirely.
That was the Robinsons' Royal Rundown done.
That was done.
Yes, it was a different version. I was going to say Ship's Special
Shorter selection.
Shorter.
But here we are,
Shorter
back in
selection.
London. We've made it back from COP26. And
Yes.
we've got a week in London.
Right, there you are. So we're doing the Queen. Let's do the Queen first, because she's not very well, as we all know. She's been in a helicopter and she's flown to Sandringham and back. Why did she go to Sandringham and back?
She went for a long-planned private weekend. She's been staying at Windsor Castle, where she has been resting on the advice of doctors and only undertaking light duties. But at the weekend just gone, we know that she flew to Sandringham, where she spent a couple of days, and she has now returned to Windsor Castle.
She's back.
She's back.
She's back, and we're very pleased that she is. Well enough to fly, at least, which is a good thing. Interesting that they left. There was a lot of discussion amongst very royally people on kind of inside the tent stuff. What do you say in America? Inside baseball. About the flag. When do you leave the flag flying above Windsor Castle if the Queen's not there? The answer is not often, but they did on this occasion.
They did, and the argument on this occasion was that the flag was left flying because although the Queen wasn't there, the court remained in residence at Windsor Castle.
I raised my eyebrow in that sort of kind of way, because has that happened before? I don't. Well, not on my watch. It hasn't.
Well, there was also the questions when the Queen had that overnight stay in hospital, the flag remained flying over Windsor Castle, and there were questions then, and we were told that that was because the court had remained at Windsor.
But even when the Queen gets in a car, the flag goes up on the car, doesn't it? So normally it goes up wherever she is. Maybe it's because they were saying this was a private weekend and you know, therefore it wasn't any of our business, it wasn't a state event, it wasn't anything that we needed to know about. I was just a bit surprised they left the royal standard, the Queen's standard, flying above Windsor Castle.
So it remained there, but she, as you say, she was on this private weekend, and we know they didn't open up the big house. She was staying at Wood Farm, which is, of course, where the Duke of Edinburgh spent a lot of time in his retirement. After he retired in 2017, he spent a lot of time at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate.
Of course, we still don't know what's wrong with the Queen. She's cancelled 2 weeks of engagement. She's still hoping to go to Remembrance Sunday, as we call it here in the UK, on Sunday the 14th, where she will watch the service at the Cenotaph. She hasn't physically done it herself for the past 3 or 4 years or so. She's still very much intending to go to that if she can.
Yeah, the Cenotaph is one of these sort of heavily inked dates in the Queen's diary. She has missed it 6 times in her reign, 4 times when she's been on tour, twice when she's been pregnant. So it's sort of an unmissable date for her. It means a lot to her, and even since she passed over wreath-laying duties to her son, the Prince of Wales, in 2017, she has always watched from the balcony, wanting to be there in person and sort of pay her own respects personally.
Now, before I came in here and sat down, I've been having a chat with the Dean of Westminster Abbey. Now, the reason why we're at Westminster Abbey is you'll see from these pictures, I go through the usual routine, you'll see from these pictures if you're watching on YouTube, but if you're not watching on YouTube, you can see the pictures on our Instagram channel, ITV News Royals. But for those of you on YouTube, here are the pictures of Camilla, who led the service of remembrance on what we call Armistice Day, what the US call Veterans Day, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when the armistice was signed with Germany. And Camilla led it. Now, the field of remembrance is something that began quite organically after the end of the First World War, and now a very senior member of the royal family goes every single year. I mean, we've been there when Harry's been there, we've been there previously when Camilla was there, we've been there with others, haven't we?
Yeah, it's the 93rd field of remembrance. It's been taking place every year since November 1928.
28, I think, was when the Royal started going, but it actually started, someone was telling me today, interestingly, a little bit before that, in terms of when it began after the First World War.
And there are thousands of poppies
Oh, yes.
outside, sort of, it's in a courtyard just outside the Abbey, and there were 300 plots this year with 70,000 remembrance symbols.
As you will see if you go on ITV News Royals on Instagram, I just posted one of those pictures by my very self a short while ago. But if you're on YouTube, then you'll see the pictures. Now, I was talking to the Dean of Windsor. He was the one that was with Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall. So it was a moment not just to ask him about the Queen and whether he thinks that she will be well enough to attend the national service on Sunday, but also to talk about something else Camilla did there, wasn't it? When she laid some flowers on the tomb of the unknown soldier.
Yeah, this is a nod to a tradition that was set by the Duke of Edinburgh, and when he went to the Field of Remembrance on Armistice Day, he would go and also lay flowers on the tomb of the unknown soldier. So it's sort of a tradition that they are continuing.
Exactly. So the tomb, last year we had the 100th anniversary of the tomb of the unknown soldier, as well as of the cenotaph, all of course put up and created after the end of the First World War. And the tomb of the unknown soldier, where Camilla laid that wreath today, just has this quite simple description on it. Beneath this stone rests the body of a British warrior, unknown by name or rank, brought from France to lie amongst the most illustrious of the land and buried here on Armistice Day, 11 November 1920, in the presence of His Majesty King George V. The Duchess of Cornwall laid a wreath here at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Tell us about the significance of something that her father-in-law started doing some time ago.
So we don't always open the Field of Remembrance on this particular day, on the 11th of the 11th. When that does happen, then the tradition that His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh started for us was that he would come in and we would finish the visit to the Abbey and to the precincts by putting a wreath on the grave of the unknown warrior.
You were here last year when the Queen was here, obviously. I think the country's eyes will be on the cenotaph, as it normally is, at 11 o'clock on Sunday, but also to see that the Queen is well enough to be there.
She will really want to be there. Remembrance, her association with the armed forces, their loyalty to her, those things go very deep.
Other members of the royal family were doing remembrance events as well. Charles was down in South London, wasn't he?
Yeah, Charles was in Brixton on an engagement, and he was out on the engagement when 11 o'clock fell, which is when we mark a minute's silence. So he took part in that during the engagement. But he was also asked out and about meeting some of the crowds how the Queen was.
Prince Charles, are not stopping. How is your mother?
Meet you. Oh, Prince, fantastic.
I had an amazing time with
so
you at the Commonwealth Head of Government meeting in Malta. I remember you very, very well. You're a great man. We're very, very proud of you, sir. Very proud of what you're doing.
And thank you for the visit.
Thank you so much.
You can just about hear how he was asked there how his mother was. And whilst we're on armistice things, Prince Harry and Meghan, this is going to be a nice segue, actually. Prince Harry and Meghan were doing a Veterans Day event, or the eve of Veterans Day in the US. They were on the USS Intrepid, no longer an actual warship, a sort of museum that's moored up on the banks of the River Hudson in New York City. They were honouring veterans in the US. Harry spoke about the similarities between the UK and the US, how they honour veterans. I would personally say I think the US do it much better than we do, and have done for many years. But it enables us to lead quite neatly into what's been quite a heavy Harry and Meghan week.
Yeah, we've not had featured Harry and
week.
Meghan much on the podcast in recent weeks, but yes, we've had a couple of days of sort of big Harry and Meghan news. They've both taken part in sort of online summits, both of their comments getting quite widely picked up, and then we've had developments in
the court case.
The court case.
There's something you haven't heard for a long time, the Mail on Sunday versus Meghan. We've done quite a few episodes of this podcast on that very subject. So shall we talk about the Mail on Sunday versus Meghan, or shall we talk about what Harry said in that online summit about the media and the fact that he predicted that the US Capitol riots were going to start?
Well, let's go in order. So let's start with Harry the other evening.
Right.
Well, evening our time.
Right. This is an event called Rewired.
Yep.
That he was taking part in, talking about, the toxicity. I think we all know about that. We all see it. Some of us experience toxicity on social media. Harry was talking about how 70% of the online hate about his wife comes from just 50 accounts. There was even some online accounts this week chose some royal commentators and were talking about how much interaction there has been with negativity and all the rest of it. I'm pleased to say that my account wasn't one of those that was chosen, and actually probably for good reason, because I don't engage with this nasty negativity that some others have been accused of. Anyway, I digress. So Harry's obviously, I mean, he hates the British press at the best of times, and this was another way that he could express his frustration.
Yeah, he said, talking about the British press, that they don't report the news, they create it, and they've successfully turned fact-based news into opinion-based gossip with devastating consequences for the country. So I know the story all too well. I lost my mother to this self-manufactured rabidness, and obviously I'm determined not to lose the mother to my children to the same thing. It's something we've heard Harry talk about previously, and I think it's something we will hear him talk about repeatedly in the future.
Now, I thought you read that very eloquently, but I think actually we can probably
play the clip. I thought that. I got halfway through it and thought, you're probably going to say, why are you saying that?
I put it on my Twitter, so I know it exists out there somewhere. So I remember clipping it up and putting it on my Twitter. So here's Harry saying what you heard Lizzie say, and then at the end of it, you can tell us who you thought said it best.
My experience, I guess, has been more pre-social media around the UK press, who sadly conflate profit with purpose and news with entertainment. And they don't report the news, they create it. And they've successfully turned fact-based news into opinion-based gossip with devastating consequences for the country. So I know the story all too well. I lost my mother to this self-manufactured rabidness, and obviously I'm determined not to lose the mother to my children to the same thing.
Lizzie just said to me, she thought halfway through that clip, why am I reading this? And I thought, well, I thought the same thing too. Anyway.
He's nothing if not honest with me, so that's always good.
That's what Harry said. Also, an interesting thing that Harry said about the US riots. Now, obviously, he was having a chat with the Twitter boss, what's he called, Jack Dorsey. And he was saying to Jack Dorsey, I warned Jack Dorsey the day before the US riots that it was going to happen, and he never sent me an email back.
Yeah, I'm not going to read that because we'll play the clip in a second.
Shall we?
We could just play it now.
How about I read it out and then we'll hit no? Okay, we've done that. Well, let's listen to Harry say it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Have you ever had a chance to present your case to the leaders of these companies, Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey?
No, not directly, not personally. Jack and I were emailing each other prior to January the 6th, where I warned him that his platform was allowing a coup to be staged. That email was sent the day before, and then it happened, and I haven't heard from him since.
I mean, there was a lot of people saying on Twitter after that, well, what did he know that the FBI didn't know? Or how was Harry simply just looking at Twitter saying, oh, you've got the ingredients for inciting a riot? Or did he actually know some evidence that he should have shared with the FBI?
He's spoken previously about social media platforms being a place that could sort of create this sort of hate and potentially have created what happened at the Capitol, but he never went as far as saying that he thought that the platform was allowing a coup to be staged. He's never gone that far before.
But he said that Jack from Twitter, or Jack Dorsey from Twitter, never got back to him afterwards. So all in all, quite interesting. I don't think we really are surprised by what Harry said about the press, particularly the British press, the UK press, and he was talking about how it was before social media that he kind of had first experience of this. And we always like to point out that the UK press isn't one big homogenous group. There are broadcasters, there are tabloids, there are broadsheets, there is social media. If Harry ever were to watch this, I would say to him, can you be a bit more specific about which bits of the press you're referring to, because otherwise it tarnishes us all with the same brush.
And there is a big difference between mainstream media and social media and things that just get churned out on social media.
A lot of the vileness, a lot of the vitriol, a lot of the racism, a lot of the misogyny is not in the British press. I mean, some people accuse it of starting in the tabloids. The tabloids would argue otherwise, but it's all on social media. And that's not just directed at Harry and Meghan, it's also directed at William and Kate. It's also directed at reporters, some in this room, that might be trying to just report facts and information, but there we are. it might be worth you, therefore, having a look at what the British press did after Meghan's court case on Wednesday. Here's a little montage that I made up and put on my Twitter. There was one broadsheet in here, the rest were tabloids. It's probably the Sun one that people would think was a little bit odd, putting Meghan into a sort of Little Miss outfit or whatever it was. Anyone who knows the Mr. Men books or the Little Miss books, they were saying that Meghan was Little Miss Forgetful. But anyway, there's a montage. Make of it what you will. Some of it was rather odd. But everyone was focusing essentially on this Court of Appeal. So you heard the word appeal. That's because the Mail on Sunday is appealing against the earlier High Court ruling that found in Meghan's favour. And the fact that Meghan apologised, didn't she, for forgetting about a meeting that happened with the authors of Finding Freedom.
Yeah, there are two big things that came out of the court case yesterday, which is Wednesday. We publish on a Friday. One of them is that Meghan had to apologise, and that came after a witness statement from the former head of communications, Jason Knauf, and he spoke about...
Let me just tell everyone who Jason Knauf is. So actually, here's some pictures of Jason Knauf. This is him at William's Earthshot Awards recently. He currently runs the Royal Foundation, William and Kate's charity arm. Previous to that, Jason Knauf was the communications secretary to both Harry and Meghan and William and Kate. So this is all centering on the time when he was the communications secretary for both those couples, for the Sussexes and the Cambridges.
Yeah, and in this witness statement, he spoke about the biography Finding Freedom, and he said that the book was discussed, to quote, on a routine basis with the couple. Previously, Harry and Meghan have said that they had no cooperation with the book at all.
Yeah, we have listened to many hours of this court case, haven't we? And one of the things that I thought was abundantly clear in that court case was Meghan and Harry saying we had nothing to do with Omid Scobie and Carolyn Durand, the two authors of Finding Freedom. We didn't give them permission to write the book. It is unauthorised. We didn't put them in touch with any of our friends. We didn't meet them for a meeting. They didn't interview us. You know, you were left with no other impression other than we had nothing to do with it. And yet we get from this witness statement from the aforementioned Jason Knauf that actually we did discuss it and they knew that there was a meeting going on, and I had a meeting with Omid Scobie and Carolyn Durand, and Harry gave me lots of ideas about, do you want me to be there? I could even come and talk to them. Didn't he say that? And in the end, it turned out it was a 2-hour meeting that Jason Knauf had with Omid Scobie and Carolyn Durand with the full knowledge of Harry and Meghan. In fact, Harry wrote at one stage, "Oh, how I hope they report on it properly. Good luck!" !
And one of the other key things is that ahead of that meeting with the authors, Jason Knauf shared with Meghan several briefing points that they wanted to talk to him about. And in reply to that, Meghan gave him information to help with those briefing points.
Yes, and he couldn't remember what the information was. Is that right? Didn't he say that? Or but
we've actually.
But I mean, the point here, where Harry sent him an email, the Duke wrote to me. This is Jason Knauf. Also, are you planning on giving them, Omid Scobie and Carolyn Durand, a rough idea of what she's been through over the last 2 years? Media onslaught, cyberbullying on a different scale, puppeteering, Thomas Markle, etc., etc., even if they choose not to use it. And then he says, so if you aren't planning on telling them, can I?
Yeah.
So they were well aware of this meeting with the authors of Finding Freedom.
And I've got here the reply to some of those briefing points they wanted. That's everything from family to a statement that was released in November 2016, their first appearance at Invictus. There was wedding background that she helped with. And then, interestingly, some details about the tiara for the wedding day, which has been...
Is this the tiara
about
which a lot of people claimed Harry said what Meghan wants, Meghan gets?
That's the one.
Right, that tiara.
That tiara.
Yeah. Right, okay, go on.
So
this is taking me back a few years.
Within these background notes, Meghan writes, the Queen said they all suited her and Meghan chose the diamond one, which the Queen agreed was perfect. Shame to see such a beautiful, sweet moment skewed in media. There was no conversation about any other tiara as a preference. Meghan loved the one she wore and it remains a very special memory. So these are quite detailed background notes and show just how much help they gave Jason for that briefing with the authors. Yeah.
And previously in the High Court case, it was all never had anything to do with it. This book was nothing to do with us.
So following that, in a witness statement provided by Meghan, she issued some apology, and I will read this because we can't play it to you.
Meghan can record it for us if she so wishes. But anyway,
she could do, yes. She said, I accept that Mr. Knauf did provide some information to the authors for the book, and that he did so with my knowledge for a meeting that he planned with the authors in his capacity as Communications Secretary. The extent of the information he shared is unknown to me. When I approved the passage, I did not have the benefit of seeing these emails, and I apologise to the court for the fact that I had not remembered these exchanges at the time. I had absolutely no wish or intention to mislead the defendant or the court.
The defendants being the Mail on Sunday.
Yes.
So hence why you had those newspaper articles I mentioned before, calling her Little Miss Forgetful, or Meghan apologising for misleading the court, but it wasn't her intention to do so. The other bit of information that we got yesterday also involved the very same person, the aforementioned Jason Knauf, previously Communications Secretary. And this was about text messages that Meghan sent him about her father's letter. This is what the whole court case is about. If you need a reminder, Meghan writes letter to father. Father leaks it to Mail on Sunday. Mail on Sunday publishes it. Meghan sues for breach of privacy. Always said this was a very private letter. Now, we've known that Jason Knauf saw some drafts of the letter beforehand on Meghan's mobile phone, but we've got a lot more detail now that he was in Tonga at the time, recceing for Harry and Meghan's upcoming South Seas tour. He received text messages. He received a draft of the letter from Meghan, and the crucial point, did she or did she not think the letter might be leaked by her father?
Well, according to Jason, he said that Meghan asked him to review the letter, saying, to quote, "Obviously, everything I have drafted is with the understanding that it could be leaked, so I've been meticulous in my word choice, but please do let me know if anything stands out for you as a liability."
There is a big difference between anticipating a leak and intending a leak.
And that's Meghan's argument, essentially, that she never intended it to, but was putting the protections in place in case it was.
So these are text messages from Duchess to Communications Secretary on the 22nd of August 2018, as set out in court. And Meghan writes, "Obviously, everything I have drafted is with the understanding that it, the letter, could be leaked. So I have been meticulous in my word choice." She also talks to Jason about whether or not she should refer to Thomas Markle as Daddy. And she says, in the unfortunate event that it leaked, it would pull at the heartstrings. There's detail about how she numbered the pages, 1 of 5, 2 of 5, 3 of 5, so that nobody could selectively, only print one page of the letter rather than the whole thing. And she even finished sentences across 2 pages so that it would be obvious that there was more to the letter were it ever to leak. So yes, there was an absolute anticipation that it leaked, but as a lawyer said to us, didn't he, this week, well, that might not make any difference to the case of a breach of privacy.
Well, I mean, from Meghan's perspective, she has a claim to privacy, even if she thought it might be leaked. If she didn't want it to be leaked and it wasn't intended to be leaked, then in those circumstances, she's got a good claim in privacy.
So something else that Jason said in his written statement was that Meghan said she felt, to quote, fantastic after writing the letter, and added that if he leaks it, then that's on his conscience, but at least the world will know the truth. Words I could never voice publicly. She said that writing the letter was cathartic and real and honest and factual.
So there we are. The Court of Appeal case continues, and they will probably reserve judgments even when they finish hearing. I think it's today. We're not going to find out exactly what the judge is, or judge? Court of Appeal. Is there more than one judge? I should know this, but I don't.
Judge.
The judges or judge will reserve judgment on it, and we will find out in due course. But actually, even if Meghan were to lose this is the Mail on Sunday arguing that they think the whole thing should go to trial. They're not trying to overturn the fact that there was a breach of Meghan's privacy. They just want the whole thing to go to trial and have it decided that way, rather than before when it was decided by a judge because he thought the case was so clear cut.
a summary judgment.
There we go. Harry and Meghan news. Quite a lot of it this week, after many weeks without it.
There was also staying with Meghan on the night that
is
Harry...
Is that segue coming up here?
No.
Okay.
No segue at all.
Okay.
Sorry.
On
the night that Harry spoke about Twitter and the Capitol, Meghan was also doing an online summit, and she has been cold calling senators about paid parental leave. It's something that she's done some campaigning on, believes very strongly about, and she said...
So if you're a US senator and your phone rings, it might be Meghan.
Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, yes.
Hi.
She described that as that paid parental leave is a humanitarian issue, not a political one, which is a quote that some listeners might be familiar with because it is something that Princess Diana once said when talking about landmines.
I just would have thought paid parental leave. Is it if it involves employers having to pay for it? If there's a sort of, I don't even know this, I'm just speculating. If there's a dispute between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party about whether or not paid parental leave should be a thing, it's political.
Well, she claims it's not a red or a blue issue, that it's
not red or blue, it's just the fact that people should have it, which I'm sure they should.
But yes, she answered the question directly. No. But that does provide you with a segue into the next element.
Does it? No.
Yes.
No, why didn't you do it?
Princess Diana.
Princess Diana. Because we spoke to Aminatou Sow, who's from CNN, and she has just started a podcast with the name of which is When Diana Met.
When Princess Diana Met. Yeah. And 6 episodes, and each episode she has a different guest who gives some insight into their dealings with Princess Diana.
And we began by asking Aminatou about what it is. What is her personal fascination with Princess Diana? And actually she said it is very common for people of colour to have that fascination, and it's something that she got from her mother. So have a listen to our conversation with her. Aminatou, thank you so much for joining us. Now, I mean, I was listening to your podcast and you were telling us about how your mother had a real obsession with Diana. You've got that from your mother, and in a way it's a kind of a way of you remembering your mother. But what was it? What was her fascination with Diana?
You know, honestly, I have been trying to figure that out myself throughout recording this podcast. And before that, I had so many conversations with particularly women who were Black from the diaspora from everywhere. And there was this common theme of our mothers liking Princess Diana, you know, and I think that it's possible that it's because she was the most photographed woman at the time. But my sense is that there was a deeper emotional connection there, and we've been trying to explore that all along.
Yeah, I was quite interesting because you were saying, particularly for women of colour, you found Diana particularly inspirational. And is it that because there's something about her being the outsider in the royal family? Is it something that the fact that she was the way she was treated? What is that? What is the reason?
Yeah. You know, one of my guests, Allegria Adedeji, tells us later on that for her, the love of Diana that our mothers has is completely inexplicable. And I appreciated her saying that, you know, but I think that the common threads that we see here are that she was an underdog, which I think is something that for people of color is such a direct, it's such a direct connection, and it's something that's so easy to sense. But I think that there was something also just about the warmth that she had. And as opposed to, you know, other members of the royal family at the time, she was someone that they got to see just be very warm towards people of color. Like there were, you know, like touching, hugging, embracing. And today that's a very, you know, it sounds almost, it's almost like frightening to say like, oh, in the 80s, that seemed novel, you know, but I think that at the time, like this was a kind of imagery that did not exist.
I'm just interested, Diana has been so widely covered at such great length over so many years. How did you even begin to start choosing only 6 people to speak to about her? And what did you learn that maybe we didn't know already about her?
You know, honestly, this is something that we talked about a lot on our team, but the truth is that every single time I bring up Princess Diana around someone, even people who say that they don't care or that they don't follow royal gossip or that they're above all of that, there is always a really strong recollection of a memory there, whether it's the day that she died or it's an event that she was involved in. And I think that we really wanted to explore that. And we're also, I think, particularly in a cultural moment where a lot of us are thinking about the representation of women, specifically through media and what it's meant. And I know that I certainly like grew up with a media that very much maligned her, you know, and you know, I was rereading the Tina Brown book and the Andrew Morton book, and it's interesting, like some of the perceptions that are there. And with the hindsight of history and time, I was like, I wonder today, if she were princess today, how would we feel about that? I think there is also something very emotional and shocking realizing that she died when she was 36. I am 36. And I was like, this woman had teenage children. She had tween children. By the time she was 36, she had lived more life than most people had lived. And it's interesting to look at some, you know, I would not want anyone to remember me for who I was at 18 or 19 or 21, or frankly, even 36 at some moments. And we do not allow her to be a full person, because she has been someone who has just been the object of so much projection. So again, I think it's interesting to look back today.
She kind of makes you feel like you're an underachiever at 36, because she achieved so much in that, you know, when she sadly died. When you think everything she did on landmines and everything she did for those who were suffering from AIDS at the time, or the taboo she broke down, or the fight she had with the royal family, it's quite a lot by 36.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a lot. And if you think about even just this narrative that she was this like cunning young girl who wanted to marry a prince. First of all, it's not true. But second of all, if it were true, is that a crime? And also, is that not what we tell all little girls to aspire to? The fairy tale. It's a trope for a reason, you know. And so to think about the amount of pressure that is there, or not recognizing that as a society we create all of these norms that end up affecting a woman like that, you know. I just think it's interesting to think, to look back on her and think, and have a little bit of critical thinking and a little bit of compassion about what her presence meant. And I think, you know, she's also someone who was incredibly, incredibly modern for her time. When Princess Diana did that mine walk in Angola, that was mind-blowing at the time, you know, that she would do that. She really invented that kind of celebrity activism, and that's like important to look back to as well.
I went with Prince Harry when he went to Angola very recently, and he walked down. It wasn't the track that she walked down is now a road. It's in part of a town, but he also went to another minefield and walked down, and he wore the same blue body vest. And it was a really, really emotional moment. We were just discussing before we came in here about the film. Have you seen it?
No.
No. Spencer, you've seen it?
I have seen Spencer, yes.
So, as someone who's looked into Diana in such great detail, what's your view?
Oh man, I will confess going into it that I had not realized that it was going to be an art film, which was, you know, I think probably a lot of people's strong feelings are about that. I don't know, you know, it was so fascinating to see, especially because it lives in conversation with all of the other Diana content that we're observing. And there's something strangely like odd about that. It just feels like very bizarre to see a different representation of her, different from The Crown, different from the documentaries that we are bombarded with right now. You know, but there is such a fascination with this person still.
From what you learned from your kind of conversations that you had though, how do you think the film depicted Diana? Was it a accurate depiction from what you've learned about her from your work you've done?
The film's based on just 3 days, isn't it? In the run up to Christmas, or just a 3-day kind of episode glance into her life.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I learned throughout the course of making this podcast that was reinforced by 2 guests specifically, and it's something that I don't see depicted enough, like not in Spencer, not anywhere else, is that she was actually a very joyful person. People will talk a lot about the sorrow of her life, and that makes sense to me, especially in light of, you know, tragically dying at 36. But it was really heartening and surprising for me to hear from so many people who had been around her that she was a true delight. They were like, she was a gas. She was a fun person to be around. She was vivacious, and she was also just like deeply, 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 deeply kind. And, you know, and I'm focusing on the kindness specifically because today, we use this word emotional intelligence, you know, and I think that when I think through that depiction in Spencer or other depictions that I've seen, it's very much a person who seems a little unsure of themselves, who is, you know, just like really learning the ropes of being a person. And, you know, and today I hope that like we would see that some of that actually is a credit. I was like, no, this person is like, emotional intelligence is important, and this person had it. And that is something that we don't discuss enough.
Now, you've got 6 episodes in this podcast. The very first episode, you've decided to do a deep dive into issues surrounding what Diana referred to as the other woman in the marriage. You've focused on Camilla, which is quite an interesting choice, I'll say that much. We were with the Duchess of Cornwall this morning, with Camilla this morning. She was at an event at Westminster Abbey to mark what we call Armistice Day. You call, I think, Veterans Day, don't you, on the 11th of November?
Yeah, happy Armistice Day to you.
And I think, you know, let's not get into who was to blame for the marriage and all of that. But I think what is clear, within hindsight, is that Charles and Diana should never have been together in the first place. They were the most sort of mismatched couple ever. But I wonder why you chose Camilla as your first topic of conversation, and your guest, of course, says she can't even be in the same room as her.
Yes, you know, the reason that I chose Camilla obviously is because it's a provocative choice, but 2, it's because this is also someone that I have really come to change my mind, or rather this episode is something that I've really come to change my mind about. I know that you said you don't want to get into the marriage and whose fault it is, but that's the whole point, is that that should not be the frame of the conversation. It is obviously not Camilla's fault because she was not in that marriage. You know, and I think that today
we had a husband who was a serial adulterer herself. And I mean,
exactly. And also, you know, humans are complex, complicated people. And the truth of the matter is that Diana and Charles should have never been married, you know, and now when I look at his marriage with Camilla, again, these are people that we do not know. So it's not a personal judgment. It's more about how celebrity and fame and power informs social norms and informs the kind of conversations that we have. It's like, when I look at them now, it's like, you know what, like, unpleasant first marriage, but how beautiful that 2 people who love each other found each other and have been living together for so long.
You talked about Diana, how she was an outsider, how she challenged the royal family, and that reminds us of someone who's very present. And
let me think who that could be.
That would be the
who? Could it be Ariana Grande? Who are we talking about?
Yeah.
Do you see parallels between the Duchess of Sussex and Princess Diana?
I mean, I think that the obvious parallel, they're very different people. It is a different time. It is, you know, Meghan Markle is an American, she's a person of color, but I think that's something that I have been really struck by on the parallels are, one, their treatment by the media. And I think that I would include, you know, the future king's wife as well in this paradigm, where the media is still very unkind to women who enter into this family in a way that sometimes really depresses me, because, you know, I'm just like, how is nothing changing? And I think that, you know, another obvious.
It happened to Diana, it happened to Prince Andrew's wife, Sarah Ferguson.
Yes, it happened to Kate. It is happening to Meghan.
Or she conformed, if you like, yeah.
But I think that the most obvious parallel to me between Princess Diana and Meghan Markle is that they are 2 people whose entry into the royal family could have signaled a very powerful kind of change. And they are both people that the crown could have used as an opportunity to expand, you know, the kinds of people who feel welcomed into
I agree. They were
into being part of that society.
They were assets, weren't they? I mean, Princess Diana at the beginning in 1982, 83, 84, she was an asset. Everyone loved the royal family because of Princess Diana. We have our own experience of being on engagements with Harry and Meghan. Everyone loved them, absolutely loved them. It was a real kind of turning point for the royal family, and all the more sad that it didn't work out.
Yeah, it's just, they're both huge diplomatic and cultural assets and huge signals of progress and change. And, you know, I think, again, for me, it's not about do we like them, do we not like them? We do not know these people, you know, and we do not, it's not a contest of who's up and who's down. And, you know, but I think that, like, as cultural symbols And as political symbols, this is a huge missed opportunity for the royal family.
Some of your guests that you have on, people will have definitely heard of before, like Elizabeth Emmanuel. The famous wedding dress has been on display at Kensington Palace.
You've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, I saw it. I got lucky. I got to see a preview of it before it was open to the public. But
how long was that train? Like 50 meters or something?
Very, very.
I can't wait for you to hear her description of that day and of the dress itself. It was like she was wonderful.
But I wonder, in kind of, Elizabeth Emmanuel, David Emmanuel have done a lot of interviews since the wedding day. How did you approach that interview to try and find out sort of new information about Diana that perhaps we didn't know already?
Yeah, with the people who were intimate to her, with people who shared these intimate moments with her, I was really just curious about their perceptions of her. We hear a lot about the work itself sometimes, or just these like very small details. I was curious, for example, about how much the dress had cost. I was curious what it is, how do you pay the bill when someone cuts your hair and you're a princess? But at the same time, I am really curious about like what those chance encounters meant for them.
Yeah, how do you pay the bill?
Listen, you'll have to listen. But I will tell you now that the dress was paid for in guineas, which as someone who is not from your part of the world, I was very amused by. It was like doubloons. Are these currencies? Are these currency? But I think that it really is also about asking some of these people who were there how they think that she was misperceived at the time and how they think that we are still not quite understanding who she is.
What is the sort of standout thing you have learned about her that maybe people didn't know, or people don't see her in that way?
Oh, I mean, we've talked about so many of them already. I think just how deeply intelligent she was. It came back over and over again that she was very happy, actually, and that she shared these. I don't know why I'm so struck by that. I think it's because all of the depictions I see of her, she just looks so sad and somber, or we focus so much on the tragedy of her life, but there were, I think also just like learning very small details about how seriously she took her activism, whether it was purposefully wearing really soft fabrics because she knew that she was going to meet with children, or having things, like having accessories that like children could play with, or just how very unrehearsed she was and just willing to take a chance. I think that has been like very lost on me, that there were, even in a moment where her life was very much taken up by an institution, she was someone who got to make strong individual choices. And that I think is something that's like very remarkable to me.
Well, listen, we really thank you for your insight, and we wish you luck with the podcast. Thank you for coming on our podcast. And of course, you're in New York, am I right in saying?
I am. Hello from Brooklyn.
Harry and Meghan are in New York. You could pop down and see them, and you could get a sort of first-hand podcast with that. Why not?
Who knows? I will definitely send them my best from you all.
Yeah. Now, I have another segue for you after the very eloquent one that we had before our intermission with our friends at CNN. My segue goes, Princess Diana had a friend. Her friend was Elton John. Elton John this week got an honour from Prince Charles at Windsor.
He did. So he's Sir Elton John already.
Right.
He has become a member, I've had to write this down, a member of the Order of the Companions of Honour.
A member of the Order of Companions of Honour.
Sounds very grand, doesn't it?
Pictures, again, if you're watching on YouTube. In fact, I was going to say go to our Instagram site, but I don't think I put the picture up of this one actually. So I might.
We can do. Yes.
Yes, here is some pictures of Elton John getting his honour from Prince Charles, and this is what he said to us afterwards.
I was quite taken aback when I got the letter to say that I'd received it, because I know it's very few people get it. I felt very proud to be British. I felt very blessed and very lucky. My peers who got this, I look at the list of people who have it and I think, wow, I come from Pinner, I was very humble background. And it's all down to music, really. Music's been the saviour of my life, it's been the centre of my life, and it's given me the most incredible life. So I'm very grateful to be able to do something artistic and still love what I do.
Now this segue is really easy. Elton John got his honour at Windsor Castle. Someone else got their honour at Windsor Castle this week, and that was Marcus Rashford.
Yes,
That's
Marcus
a really
Rashford,
easy segue. I
and
enjoyed that
he
one.
received his MBE for services to vulnerable children, and this is all for his
Explain
work.
to someone in America who doesn't know who Marcus Rashford is.
He's a footballer.
Yep.
An
he play
England footballer. And
which club does he play for?
He's an England footballer, and
club does he
he
play
received an MBE, and that he had a campaign for. I'm just ignoring you. A campaign.
Manchester United.
They all change clubs so quickly. I wouldn't want to.
He's been at Manchester United for some time.
Great, good. He had a campaign to get free school meals for children. A very successful campaign, and he received an MBE from Prince William, and it was
Where
Prince
on the
William's
pitch did he play? Forward, midfield,
Prince
defence?
striker.
Forward. Anyway, carry on.
That's the same, isn't it? No.
Similar.
Okay, fine. It was William's first investiture since the pandemic, and he tweeted actually before he was at Windsor. Yeah. Yes, he did a personal tweet that ended with a W. That he was pleased.
Here is William's tweet.
Pleased
you
to
can
be
read
back.
it because William didn't read it.
Pleased to be back doing investitures in person.
But also he wrote, didn't he? Which I thought was slightly swaying, spinning. What's the word I'm looking for?
I have no idea.
No. Can't find the verb, but whatever he was doing this verb which was slightly straying. That's the verb, straying into the political, because he said to Marcus Rashford, "Keep up with what you're doing," and what he has been doing is criticising the government for not doing enough for vulnerable children, for feeding them school meals during the school holidays. So, given that the royals aren't meant to stray into the land of politics, I thought that was ever so slightly political. Maybe no more so than climate change, of course, at the moment.
Yeah.
But, anyway, so...
and we spoke to Marcus afterwards, and he was very...
This is called the Windsor Castle Celebrity Section.
The Windsor Castle Celebrity Section. And he dedicated his MBE to his mother, didn't he?
He did.
Your mum must be very proud of you today.
Yeah. Yeah, she is. And like I said, I think she's visited here before when she was at school. So we were speaking on the way here. I said, are you nervous? And she was like, yeah, she's dead nervous. But it's because she probably knows the history more. And then she asked me if I was nervous, and I was just like, no, I feel like it's like the award's actually for you. So I just feel like, it's another day, and things like this help push what I'm actually doing in the right direction, because it makes people more aware of what I'm doing.
So Marcus Rashford, Elton John, the Queen, Harry, Meghan. Who's left?
The Duchess of Cambridge.
Kate.
The Duchess of Cambridge. She has been out and about this week. She did a visit to the Imperial War Museum, where she opened 2 new galleries, one of which was actually really personal to her. It's
she took some of the pictures.
She took some of the portraits. It's called Generations Portraits of Holocaust Survivors. And if you think back to last year, she took photographs of Holocaust survivors with their grandchildren, and they have formed part of this gallery. So she went to see them and see the portraits, but also the people that were in the photographs. So
that was at the Imperial War Museum, wasn't it? Do you know what? I was walking past a bookshop the other day, and at the top of the pile on this display in the window was the Hold Still thing. And I always feel like taking a picture of it and sending it to Mila Stedden, the little girl who always wanted to be a princess and wear a pink dress. But so it's still for sale. Well, it is here. So Christmas time soon. You could get Hold Still for your family. Stick it on the dining room table. No, the coffee table.
Coffee table.
Coffee table. There we are. Right, so that was the week that was in Royal Land.
We won't be here in this country next week because we are finally going on a royal tour, our first for almost 2 years, and we are...
Royal tour, yes, so we can have a podcast on the road.
Podcast on the road.
And we were on the road last week.
Yeah, but we're going...
And we've been on the road in Windsor, so it would be unfair to say we haven't been on the road.
No, but we are going on a tour. We haven't been on a tour.
A tour abroad.
A proper tour abroad.
So we are going to 2 countries, aren't we? And I can't give you too much detail about what's happening, but we are going to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
Sorry, I'm just shocked because Chris has printed off an operational note, which is a rare thing.
I have all the details here. Actually, I think this isn't actually that secret. Cause I think
that one is definitely secret.
This one's secret, so don't
be careful with that.
One. Okay.
Yeah, just
and what's this one? not for publication or broadcast.
Yeah,
So
no.
there's only one of these pieces of paper that I can show you, but this piece of paper I can show you, which actually, we're still on that camera. The Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall is going to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and to the Arab Republic of Egypt.
Yep, they're on
or simply known as Jordan and Egypt.
Jordan and Egypt. They're on a 4-day tour, 2 days in Jordan, 2 days in Egypt, and the tour will have a very heavy focus on the climate, but also looking at...
Prince Charles is going to talk about the climate.
Prince Charles is going to talk about the climate. Amazing,
well,
that. And they will also look at cooperation on defence in the region.
And as I think we said last week, because all this focus has been on COP26, the climate change summit happening in Glasgow in Scotland, COP27 is happening in Egypt. So
Egypt is the nominee country.
To
yes.
go and tell them about his views on the climate and what needs to happen to decarbon this world in which we live. So there we go. Where are you? You're there. Thank you for watching. That was the podcast, a busy one, full of lots of news and information and chat and a fair bit of other stuff, important things, celebrities, heads of state, royal tours. I mean, you don't get this from many podcasts, but you do get it from this one.
We will see you next week.